Konnichiwa, Mina! And now it's time for Week 19 of the 2016 PFA season, the week of December 18th and 19th. But before we begin, we gotta take a look at the standings from last week. And as we take a look at the standings, as you can see, Washington still has a 3-game lead over Boston in the National East. Omaha, after losing 2 in a row, has only a 5-game lead over Denver in the National Central. Birmingham has a 2-game lead over Atlanta in the National South. And Phoenix has a 1-game lead over Los Angeles in the National West. In the Century East, Baltimore has a half-a-game lead over Pittsburgh. Chicago has a 3-game lead over Minneapolis. No, 4-game lead over Minneapolis in the Century Central. Dallas has the tiebreaker over New Orleans in the Century South. And San Francisco has the tiebreaker over San Diego in the Century West. Then we go to the playoff stands first in the National Conference, with Omaha having the number 1 spot still. Washington leapfrog over Phoenix for the 2nd spot. Phoenix has the 3rd seed. Birmingham has the 4th seed. Los Angeles has the 5th seed. And Portland has the 6th seed. And the playoff clinching scenarios is Omaha can clinch a first-round bye if either Phoenix or Washington loses. And they can still clinch home field advantage if they win or Phoenix and Washington loses. Birmingham can clinch a playoff spot in the National South if they win or if Atlanta loses. Los Angeles will clinch a playoff spot if they win, and Portland can clinch a playoff spot if they win, and all the other 9-7 teams lose. Then we go over to the Century Conference, where Chicago has the number 1 spot, Baltimore has the 2nd seed, Dallas has the 3rd seed, San Francisco has the 4th seed, Pittsburgh has the 5th seed, and San Diego has the 6th seed. Now, Chicago can clinch a first-round bye if they win, or Dallas and San Francisco lose. Oh yeah, and San Diego and New Orleans too. Or they can clinch home field advantage if they win and Baltimore and Pittsburgh loses. Baltimore can clinch the Century East if they win and Pittsburgh loses. And they would clinch first-round bye too if that would happen as well. But Pittsburgh will clinch a playoff spot if they win, and they will clinch the Century East if they win and Baltimore loses, and they could clinch first round bye if they win and New Orleans, Dallas, San Francisco, and San Diego tied in their respective games. But Pittsburgh will clinch a playoff spot if they win, and they will clinch the Century East if they win and Baltimore loses, and they could clinch first round bye if they win and New Orleans, Dallas, San Francisco, and San Diego tied in their respective games. But Pittsburgh will clinch a playoff spot if they win, and they will clinch the Century East if they win and Baltimore loses, and they could clinch first round bye if they win and New Orleans, Dallas, San Francisco, and San Diego tied in their respective games. But Pittsburgh will clinch a playoff spot if they win, and they will clinch the Century East if they win and Baltimore loses, and they could clinch first round bye if they win and New Orleans, Dallas, San Francisco, and San Diego tied in their respective games. But Jacksonville would pull off the upset to win 24-16, which would officially give Birmingham Hornets the National South title. Man, Atlanta has shot to win it, or tie it at least. But Jacksonville would seal it with a pick 6 with time expired to seal it. Atlanta's running back Cam Dixon had 19 attempts for 104 yards. Jacksonville's linebacker Richard Calabrese, 12 tackles and a sack. And Atlanta's linebacker Marco Lang, 12 tackles. So congratulations to the Birmingham Hornets for clinching the 2016 National South title. And think about this. Just 7 weeks into the season, they were 3-4 and far behind Birmingham for the title. But they've gone 9-1 since with the number 1 defense in the league, and they've clinched it. But they gotta play Phoenix, which is right next. So as I was just saying, we go down up to Birmingham, as the Birmingham Hornets host the Phoenix Storm. Now, they didn't clinch the division yet because it takes place at the same time as the Atlanta game. So they had to win out to finally know if they're going to get the division. And Birmingham would win in overtime. They had to do a massive comeback, but they did to win the National South. Even though I just mentioned it earlier, which they found out during the kickoff for overtime that Atlanta lost, which would clinch in the division then. but Birmingham's running back Guy Metz 31 attempts, 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Phoenix blew both a winning field goal in regulation and overtime to have won it. So did Birmingham in regulation. They could have won it there as well. Birmingham linebacker Eugene Christensen had 14 tackles, and Birmingham's swarming defense had 5 sacks. Also with this victory, Omaha has clinched a first-round bye. Now if they win or Washington loses, they will clinch home field advantage. Then we go up north to Chicago as the Portland Dragons visit the Chicago 71ers in the snow. Chicago, if they win, they'll clinch first round bye. And Phoenix, if they win, they'll get closer and closer to clinching the final wild card spot in the national playoffs. And Chicago would do it 19-16. As soon as one team scored, the other team scored right back afterwards. It was incredible. And Chicago, like I said, has clinched a first round bye. Now if Baltimore and Pittsburgh lose this week, they will clinch home field advantage, as Chicago's wide receiver Raymond Hughes had 7 receptions, 104 yards, his first 100-yard game. And Portland missed 2 field goals in the game. If they got both of them, they could have won the game. Then we go down south to Dallas as the Dallas Stars host their rival New Orleans Jazz. Dallas, if they beat New Orleans, they will clinch a playoff spot in the Century South, and they're looking forward to doing it after the thrashing they gave New Orleans many weeks ago. But Dallas would blow it as they got beaten by New Orleans 28-18, and with that victory, Miami would officially be eliminated from the playoffs. New Orleans quarterback James Williams was 20 of 30 for 232 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their wide receiver Mark Matson had 9 receptions, 102 yards and a touchdown. Dallas wide receiver Billy Martino had 8 receptions, 104 yards and a touchdown. And New Orleans linebacker Jeffrey Cornell had another great game with 12 tackles and a sack. What a terrible loss Dallas blew there. Then we go up north to Detroit as the Detroit Engines host the Oklahoma Oilers, as Detroit is trying to end that 9-game losing streak. But the streak would go to 10 as Oklahoma won 20-10. Oh man, Detroit's now lost 10 in a row. That's the worst losing streak right now in the league. And matter of fact, I think that's the 3rd worst of all time right now, behind Louisville and Tampa's losing streak to start the year. Oklahoma's quarterback Peter Rose was 13 of 22, 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. Detroit running back Kyle Nolan had 20 attempts, 118 yards, and wide receiver Joseph Chavez had 6 receptions and 123 yards. Then we go south to Houston as the Miami Sharks are being hosted by the Houston Twisters. Miami, although they didn't know they were going to be eliminated yet, they were going to be fighting very hard to possibly get one of the last playoff spots available before they would realize they would be eliminated after the game. And Miami would pull off the victory 31-24. Although they fought hard, they would be eliminated, as Miami's quarterback Anthony McCormick was 17 of 29, 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. Houston's quarterback Steve Hargrove will miss the final game of the season due to a broken hip. Houston's running back Tracy Martinez had 25 attempts, 107 yards, and their receiver Thomas Newman had 12 receptions, 113 yards and a touchdown. And Miami's quarterback Gilbert Lane had 8 tackles and a pick 6 that would turn out to be the deciding factor for the game. Then we go up a little bit north to Kansas City as the Kansas City Hammerheads host the Seattle Quakes in a snowstorm, which is a fantastic sight to be in. And Seattle would get crushed by Kansas City 41-10. They could not do anything in the snow as they got their first ever losing season. Seattle's running back, though, Wilbert Brownlee, had 13 attempts, 102 yards and a touchdown, so he did good. Kansas City's wide receiver Reginald Jones had 9 receptions, 117 yards, and Seattle's linebacker Melvin Jones had 14 tackles, and cornerback Shane Jones had 13 tackles. Then we go up north to Louisville as the Louisville Saints host their division rival Indianapolis Express. In a hard-fought defensive battle, Indianapolis would win 20-17 in overtime too, as Indianapolis, after starting off 1-10, has gone 5-1 since. What an incredible turnaround they had, particularly on offense. But they're going to have to get a lot of work done for next season to get that defense fixed, as their running back Kevin Smith had 23 attempts, 148 yards. Their wide receiver Robert Monaghan had 6 receptions, 121 yards. And their strong safety Otis Moses had 11 tackles. Louisville's linebacker Larry Mercier had 13 tackles, and there was 9 sacks in this game, and 5 of them by Louisville. What an impressive job both defenses did today. Then we go up more north to Milwaukee, as the Omaha Thunder is going to be hosted by the Milwaukee Lakers, a team that almost beat Omaha during Omaha's 14-game winning streak. And remember, Omaha, all they got to do is win, and they get home field advantage. And Milwaukee's trying to break their 9-game losing streak. And Omaha would blow it again. They lost to Milwaukee 31-9. They have lost 3 in a row, and they're still blowing a chance to clinch home field advantage. Now, if Washington loses later today, they still will clinch home field advantage if that does happen. But man, Milwaukee's quarterback Herman McClendon was 16 of 26, 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back for Omaha, Mark Metz had 27 attempts, 126 yards, and their wide receiver Steve Carmona had 4 receptions, 104 yards. But man, they could not get anything done when they got close to the end zone. Now, Milwaukee's linebacker Richard Hernan, as you can see why Omaha struggled today, had 18 tackles. What an incredible game he had. Oh man, Omaha, after starting off 14-0, has now lost 3 in a row. But hey, a Washington loss, they'll still clinch home field advantage, which is hard to believe. Then we go further north in Minneapolis, as the Minneapolis Kitsune are hosting the Pittsburgh Blitz in the coldest game ever in PFA history at 22 degrees in a snowstorm. And this is a rematch from many weeks ago where Pittsburgh hosted Minneapolis and they beat them in overtime in an incredible fashion. And Pittsburgh will clinch a playoff spot if they win. Even without Cruz Tolbert, Pittsburgh would win 16-9 in a defensive struggle, and they would clinch one of the playoff spots in the conference playoffs, and they can clinch the Central East if Baltimore loses right next up. But anyways, Minneapolis' linebacker Eric Witt had 13 tackles, and oh my god, no wonder Pittsburgh won. Look at their defense, 5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. Oh man, Minneapolis' offense had no chance today. Man, the Blitz reminded me of the Steelers in this game, the way they played. Then we go down south to Orlando, as the Orlando Astros are hosted by the Baltimore Charm. And Baltimore, if they lose, Pittsburgh will clinch the Century East. But if Baltimore wins out, that's still not going to be enough to take the division over Pittsburgh. So they're going to have a whole lot of work coming for them. But Baltimore would blow it, and Pittsburgh will clinch the Century East, as Baltimore couldn't do anything on offense and let Orlando win 23-14. Orlando's running back Frank Evans had 25 attempts, 115 yards. Baltimore's wide receiver, who's leading the league in receiving yards, Ariel Leary, had 6 receptions for 144 yards, but couldn't get touchdowns off of it. Baltimore's strong safety Juan Pike, their first round pick, had 10 tackles and a sack, and Orlando's linebacker James Lyons had 10 tackles. Man, Baltimore blew it, but it benefited Pittsburgh, as the Pittsburgh Blitz are the 2016 Century East Division title champions. And even if they both won out and went 14-4, Pittsburgh still would have won the Century East because of a better division record. Then with that, we go up north to Philadelphia, as the Los Angeles Angels visit the Philadelphia Hawks, and Los Angeles will clinch a playoff spot if they win. And Los Angeles would blow it again, as Philadelphia would win 21-20. They took a lead on a 31-yard touchdown pass with just slightly over 2 minutes remaining. Philadelphia's quarterback Leroy Black was 20 of 24, 252 yards and a touchdown. Los Angeles' running back John Fox had 27 carries, 116 yards and a touchdown. 3 wide receivers throughout the game had over 100 yards, and Philadelphia's Mario Henry had 10 tackles. Then we go south to Tampa, as the Tampa Tropics host the San Antonio Longhorns, and we would have another comeback this week, as Tampa would win 17-16 and took the lead with just less than 2 minutes left on a touchdown run. And Tampa's strong safety Peemer Holman had 10 tackles, and with the loss, San Antonio is officially eliminated from the playoffs. Then we go back up south to the nation's capital, as the Washington Americans host the Oakland Majors in a rematch from last week. And remember, Washington, if they lose, Omaha would still clinch home field advantage despite the loss this week. And in an ugly defensive fashion, Washington would crush Oakland 24-0, as Oakland's strong safety Willis Little had 10 tackles, but Oakland's defense forced 3 fumbles, so they did get a lot of pressure. But with that Washington win, oh man, Omaha blew another chance to clinch home field advantage, and not only that, now Washington is in a position where they can clinch home field advantage if everything goes well for them next week. Then after that, we go out to Denver for the first time in many weeks as the Denver Miners make their first home game in a long time, hosting the Columbus Barons. And Denver would win 23-16 as Columbus actually scored as soon as Denver scored recently until the fourth quarter. Columbus's wide receiver Cole Daly had 5 receptions, 105 yards and a touchdown, along with German McNair had 5 receptions, 102 yards. Denver's wide receiver Carl Thompson had 4 receptions, 121 yards, and Columbus's defense forced 4 fumbles, so that's an impressive job they'd had. But it was not enough to beat Denver, and now Denver's in a situation next week when they host Portland. It's whoever wins that game will get the last wildcard spot in the National Conference playoffs. Then we go up north to East Rutherford, New Jersey, as the Manhattan Greens host the Buffalo Sabres. And just like for the numerous times this year, Buffalo has come back from an incredible comeback. They've won with a 31-yard touchdown pass with just 8 seconds remaining. That is incredible. And that's another playoff game that Manhattan blew a lead against in the final few minutes. Oh boy, as Buffalo's quarterback Ricky Bale had 13 of 22, 252 yards and 2 touchdowns, and New York's wide receiver Bruce Comer had 3 receptions, 106 yards and a touchdown. Man, what a disappointing loss that was for Manhattan. Then it's out to San Diego as a very important Century West game as the San Francisco Union are being hosted by the San Diego Rays. And if San Francisco wins, they would clinch a playoff spot and the Century East, but if San Diego wins, they clinch a playoff spot. San Francisco would blow a big opportunity as they're up 23-10, but San Diego came back to win 24-23. San Francisco's quarterback John Getz, who finally came back from injury, was 17 of 28, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked more sharp than ever despite the injury as Ruben Williams was ready to back up just in case. San Diego's quarterback Bobby Valentine finally played good after many weeks. 22 of 31, 255 yards, 3 touchdowns. Anthony Marks, San Francisco's running back, had 20 attempts, 101 yards. San Francisco's wide receiver Bill Presley had 8 receptions, 104 yards. And San Diego's wide receiver David Seton had 7 receptions, 103 yards and a touchdown. And with the victory, San Diego will clinch a playoff spot. Then we go out to Honolulu on Sunday night, even though it's 2 p.m. still in Honolulu, as the Boston Destroyers are being hosted by the Honolulu Phantoms, and Boston needing to win to have any shot making the playoffs, although they're probably eliminated by this point. And Boston would be eliminated from the playoffs as they got beaten 35-24 by Honolulu. Honolulu's quarterback Richard Clough had 18 of 29, 226 yards, 3 touchdowns. Boston's wide receiver Wallace Price had 7 receptions, 103 yards and a touchdown. And Boston's linebacker Ronald Billings, the second overall pick, had 10 tackles. And strong safety Stephen Meyer had 10 tackles. Then we go out to the second to last Monday night game in Las Vegas as the El Paso Mustangs are being visited by the San Antonio Gamblers. Well, actually, they're visiting the Gamblers. And this game we thought was going to be the final game to decide who would win the Century West in this earlier this season, because these two teams are like the 2 or 3 best teams in the league, but turned out both collapsed big time this year, especially El Paso, and this game would have no significance anymore, except maybe arch rivalry probably between the two. And El Paso would finish out the season strong, winning in overtime 20-17. Las Vegas blew an 11-point lead. They didn't score anything in the second half, and El Paso would come from behind to win it. Ooh, what a terrible finish that was. As Las Vegas' running back James Beverly was 19 attempts, 140 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver John Maxwell had 3 receptions, 115 yards and a touchdown. And their linebacker Zachariah Bennett had 11 tackles. And that would be the final game for El Paso as they have the bye the final week of the season. And what a disappointing season that would be. But hey, they did finish strong, so that's probably the best thing you can say for them. So now we take a look at the standings after week 19 with just 1 more week to go. Boston has a 5-game lead now over Boston. Did I say Boston twice? I mean Washington over in the National East. Omaha's lead against Denver shrunk to 3 in the National Central, although they can't win it still. Birmingham, after clinching the National South, has a 3-game lead over Atlanta in the National South. Phoenix still has a 1-game lead over Los Angeles in the Century West. Pittsburgh now has the half-game lead over Baltimore in the Century East after they clinched the division. Chicago has a 5-game lead over Minneapolis in the Century Central. New Orleans has a game lead over Dallas in the Century South. And San Diego has a 1-game lead over San Francisco in the Century West. And as we mentioned earlier, this was the final regular season game for both Baltimore and El Paso, although Baltimore will make their appearance in the playoffs. It's just a matter of who. And Baltimore did clinch the 5th seed. So they're going to be either at a combination of either Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Dallas, San Francisco, or San Diego. So now as we look at the National Conference playoff stances, Omaha still has the number 1 seed, and they did clinch home field, first round bye at least. That's good for them. Washington now has the 2nd seed. Birmingham leapfrog over to the 3rd seed. Phoenix has fallen to the 4th seed. Los Angeles still has the 5th seed, and Denver now has the 6th seed. Man, they've struggled all year. Now they're finally in the playoff hunt at the moment. So now, Omaha, all they got to do is either win or Washington loses, and they will clinch home field advantage. But if they lose and Washington wins, Washington will clinch home field advantage. Just like Washington, if either they win or Phoenix and Birmingham lose, then they clinch a first-round bye. So, Omaha, what are you doing? You're blowing a big opportunity. But also, Birmingham may have a shot at first round bye if they win and Washington loses. Phoenix still might have a shot at clinching a first round bye if they win and Birmingham and Washington lose. Plus, they will clinch the National West if they win or Los Angeles loses. Los Angeles will clinch a playoff spot if they win or whoever. Actually, they're going to clinch a playoff spot no matter who wins against Denver and Portland. It's just a matter of what seed they would get. And the last playoff spot would be either Portland or Denver. Whoever wins that game will clinch the final spot. Then we go over to the Century Conference, where Chicago has now the number 1 seed and a first-round bye. Pittsburgh now has the 2nd seed. San Diego has the 3rd seed. New Orleans has the 4th seed. Baltimore has the 5th seed, and it's guaranteed. And San Francisco has the 6th seed, and Dallas is the only other team left in the possible playoff hunt. So, Chicago will clinch home field advantage if they win or Pittsburgh loses. And Pittsburgh, maybe, this is not guaranteed, but they may just clinch home field advantage if they win and Chicago loses. But they will clinch first round bye if they win or New Orleans and San Diego lose. San Diego will clinch the Century West if they win or San Francisco loses. And if they win and Pittsburgh loses, they may have a shot at clinching first round bye. New Orleans will clinch the Century South if they win or Dallas loses. And they may clinch a first round bye if they win and San Diego and Pittsburgh loses. Now Baltimore, they're going to play the 4th seed, which could either be a combination of Pittsburgh, San Diego, New Orleans, San Francisco, or Dallas. San Francisco will clinch a playoff spot if they win and Dallas loses. And Dallas may get a playoff spot if they win and, oh boy, New Orleans or San Diego loses. And even in that case, they still might not make it. So there's a whole bunch of shit going on right now in the conference. But here we go. Here's the final schedule. The week 20 schedule. The final week of the season. And first up would be Birmingham going to Atlanta. Then Cleveland going to Boston. Then Houston going to Chicago. San Antonio going to Detroit. Milwaukee going to Indianapolis. Las Vegas going to Jacksonville. Then Omaha going to Louisville. And everyone's going to watch that game because Omaha, all they got to do is win and they clinch it. Same goes for Chicago. If they beat Houston, they'll clinch home field advantage. Then Dallas going to Miami. That's going to be very important. San Francisco going to Oklahoma. That's going to be big. New Orleans going to Orlando. That's going to be big. Manhattan going to Philadelphia. Then Seattle going to Tampa. Then to the 4 p.m. games. This is the big one. Portland going to Denver. Whoever wins will clinch the final spot in the National Conference playoffs. And then you got Phoenix going to Los Angeles with possibly the division at the line and a playoff spot at stake for Los Angeles as well. Then Honolulu going to Oakland, Buffalo going to Pittsburgh, and then a big game, interconference game as Washington will visit San Diego. And then the Sunday nighter, Kansas City going to Minneapolis. Man, who would have thought this would have any meaning many weeks ago? And then the final game of the year, Monday night game of the year will be the lowly Columbus Barons visiting the Cincinnati Colts. And all the games on Sunday, of course, will be on Christmas. Man, what an incredible season this has been. And I've been doing this since like January, I believe. And man, it's going to come down to this, the final week. Hopefully soon. Man, I can't wait to see the playoffs bracket for the playoffs. And I can't wait then to make the schedule and then start simulating the playoffs. So hopefully soon, week 20 will be abound. So, Zane, and see you hopefully soon for week 20.